morning. It's 10 o'clock, so let's start. Welcome everyone to this virtual version of the Analytical Challenge 2020. As most of you will know, the Analytical Challenge is an annual meeting organized by the section Analytical Chemistry of the KNCV, the Royal Dutch Chemical Society. In this meeting, the different working and discussion groups of the section Analytical Chemistry contribute a presentation around a central theme. And normally we organize this meeting live somewhere in the Netherlands at the Hogeschool, so at the University of Applied Sciences. We had planned to meet in Groningen this year at the Hanse Hogeschool, but unfortunately this had to be rescheduled to an online meeting due to the current pandemic. But we're happy that you're all here and that you'll also find your way to this virtual meeting. You will notice that the language of today is English. We've seen in the past years that there is always some part of the people in the audience who don't speak or don't understand Dutch. So in this way, we make sure that everyone can enjoy the presentations and the meeting. Before we start, let me express my thanks to the KNCV for offering their help in organizing this online meeting. And especially to Frank Zekeris, who has been very helpful in arranging all the technical aspects and who's playing currently also an important role behind the scenes, making sure everything runs smoothly today. So Frank, thank you very much for that. The central theme of today is bringing the lab to the sample. As analytical chemists, we are all used to samples being brought to the lab, but in the different branches of analytical chemistry, generated. And we have three very nice presentations that will give you some insight in the developments and the possibilities in the medical, forensic and pharmaceutical field. Part of the Analytical Challenge is also the yearly Van Deemter Award ceremony, the prize given by the section to the best master's thesis in the field of analytical chemistry in the Netherlands. And we will start that ceremony right away. But finally, I would like to take the opportunity to draw your attention to an important international conference that will be hosted and co-organized by the section Analytical Chemistry next year in the city of Nijmegen. Euro-analysis is a biannual European meeting that is being organized now already for the 21st time, focusing on all aspects of analytical chemistry. It will be a hybrid symposium, so partly live in Nijmegen and partly also available online. So save the dates, the 22nd to the 27th of August next year, and visit euroanalysis2021.nl for more information. And now, so without further ado, I hand over to Adriana for starting the Van Deemter Award ceremony.
So good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to represent the jury members of the Van Deemter Award. So as SAC and KNCV, we like to honor the students, the master students, and to celebrate actually a special part of the education and when they finish their masters. And we ask yearly for professors or for supervisors to submit their master students that made some, in their view, outstanding thesis, and we look into it. And we chosen last year the name of Van Deemter as one of the most outstanding Dutch analytical chemistry in our history. So for now, for 2020, we had 3 nominees. First one from Wageningen University, Charlotte, and she had a thesis on revealing the chemistry diversity of contrasting soy sauce using stearin bar sorptive extraction, SBSE, as a novel volatile trapping technique. The second nominee of this year was Nienke Mekel from the joint analytical science tracking master from the University of Amsterdam, the Free University of Amsterdam. And it was on improved identification of toxic compounds in drinking water sources through high resolution mass based on intelligent data acquisition. And the third nominee of this year is Reinier Vleugels, Leiden University Medical Center, with on the master in data science, and it was on the scope, search and chemical ontology plotting environment. As to summarize, it was a very difficult challenge. The quality of the thesis of these three students was very high. So the text was really well written, and it was really clear. The goal was the results were also impressive. And we had from everything, as I mentioned, like Reinier, looking onto ways to facilitate our life as analytical chemistry, to do data mining and to do knowledge mining. Also Ninka with the very nice new technologies of looking into the nice flavors on soy sauce, and really showing all to the way to the application on the different soy sauces and getting very nice insights on the flavor. That was Charlotte. And then Ninka with actually very interesting new ways of using data science to, in an intelligent way, design the experiments, the acquisition of the high resolution mass spectrometry. So it was very hard decision, but we had to choose one as a winner for this year. And for this year, the winner is Ninka Mekel from the UvA with her work on the intelligent way of doing HR mass. And the main reason why we selected Ninka was also because this is an innovative application of data science, but also showing that it really can make a difference in how you do your acquisition, and at the end, what kind of higher level results you get for it. So I really would like to give a hand of virtual applause to Ninka. So if my colleagues can just come in and give an applause. And for that, I also would like to see if Ninka, I saw she's logged in. If you're willing, you can receive in the image the applause. No, I don't think she, oh, I see Ninka in the group. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
So today I hope you get a surprise at home, and you will get soon the oorkonde and also the prize for you, Ninka. Well done. Okay, so I think that is for the award. And then I hand over back to Nico and Ben.
Okay, thank you everybody, and thank you Adriana for doing this award ceremony. It's my task now to introduce to you the speakers of this morning, and also the TEMA, and the TEMA lab to the sample, or bring the sample to the bring the laboratory to the sample, and not the other way around. Yeah, it's really confusing. Nico already introduced the TEMA a little bit. Of course, we are used as analytical chemists to sample somewhere in the environment or in the hospital on a patient, and then bring the sample to the laboratory and do our analytical work. But in some cases, you can also turn this around, especially when you need your results directly. So for that you need specific equipment, and nowadays many analytical equipment is getting smaller and smaller, and when getting smaller, it is also portable. So you can bring your analytical equipment to your sample or to the place where you need this analytical results, and win in time and effort. Okay, the first speaker is Joost van Pelt. Joost van Pelt is trained basically as a medical doctor, and later on he received training in clinical chemistry. And nowadays he works as a clinical chemist in the University Medical Center in Groningen, and he will talk to us about bringing the laboratory to the patient. So it's bedside analysis, and that is not as easy as you think. And of course, Joost will introduce this to us and explain what are the possibilities and what are the hiccups that you have to overcome while doing this. What I like to ask the audience is to be active in the chat. We have two chat moderators, and that's Adriana. You already saw Adriana. And there is Danny. So please put up all your questions or all your things that you think about during the presentation of Joost on the chat. And after the presentation, we will do, of course, a little discussion, and we will also take into the questions that you have put in the chat. Okay, so that's for the audience. Joost, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, then I'd like to give the floor to you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome you all. I'm honored to be invited to speak to you about point of care analysis, or rather analyses at the point of care, where we give our care. I'm going to take you through a slideshow of pictures, which I hope will give you some impression of point of care analysis in Dutch hospitals. I'm not talking about point of care analysis at the general practitioners or other forms of point of care analysis. I will just focus on point of care analysis in Dutch hospitals, or at least in my hospital, the University Hospital of Groningen. I will start sharing my screen. And I hope you can all see this. This is the University Medical Center in Groningen, where we give our care. And it's really a very big
Joost, we
city.
don't see your slides.
You don't see my slides. This is okay. Let me try to share. No. Do you see my slides? Do you see my slide?
Yeah. Yes, thanks.
Okay. I'm glad you see my slide, because this, what I said was that this is where we give our care. This is the front of the front door of the University Medical Center in Groningen. It's a very large hospital. It's really a city within a city. And if I try to point out, this is all the premises. This is where the ambulances come in. This is where the helicopter comes in. And I am now getting a message that my internet is unstable, which is very unfortunate, but I hope you now see that I'm talking to you from this window here. Now, at the other side of this building, there is the laboratory, and you will have point of care facilities all through this house. We have 1,350 beds. We have 34,000 admissions every year. We have 13,000 employees, and we have 1,000 laboratory technicians. Now, you will understand that not all of them work in my laboratory. We have 40, and most of these technicians work in the research areas. The UMCG is also a village within a village. This is the facility for the revalidatie in the town of Haren, which is an annex to Groningen, and we have point of care facilities there as well. Now, you may be glad that chemistry is all that matters, and this is what chemistry looks like, and you're all too familiar, at least with this picture of biochemistry in our metabolic pathways. And we can, in the laboratory, we have big machines that we can use to analyze different compounds, basically. And I show you one slide of the many machines that we use in analyzing the chemistry of the human body. You will understand that I work in a routine lab, and we do the down-to-earth kind of analyses, whereas in the other labs in the UMCG, we do the very highly sophisticated non-routine analyses. I will give you an outline of my talk. I will talk first about blood gas analysis at the point of care. And then afterwards, I will explain why point of care is a really high risk care. And that's why it's highly regulated in hospitals. And I hope to convince you that even though it's very complicated, point of care is exciting. And I hope that some of you will contribute in the future to developing more applications. In daily life, we keep our balance. We breathe, and we breathe in oxygen, and we breathe out carbon dioxide, and we keep our pH at a very tight, our pH is very tightly regulated. And again, I told you that this is all chemistry. Now, this little child cannot regulate its own chemistry. It's on a ventilator. That's the tube that you see going into the nose here. This is on a ventilation machine, and we have to keep him in balance. And to do that, we need to draw blood, and this is the way that you draw blood from newborns. And you can see that this takes skill. You can also imagine that it's hard to send this to a laboratory. We do send this to a laboratory, these samples, but it's good that we can also analyze them at the bedside. And although this picture has a syringe, this is what actually happens when you fill a cartridge with a little drop of blood and you put the cartridge in a machine. And at the upper left, you see the machine. And in the and here you see where the chemical analysis in the cartridge takes place. It's all miniaturized, and it's very advanced, the techniques. Now we have these systems. We can measure a lot of things. We can measure lactate, which is very important, a very important parameter. We can measure hematology parameters. In this hospital, we don't use hematology parameters for newborns on these kind of machines. We do analyze chemistry and electrolytes, and the most important, the main reason why we use point of care in neonatology is because we want to be informed about blood gases. This is a different picture, and my wife told me yesterday evening that I should explain to you that this is an intensive care ward within our hospital. I thought everybody would recognize this as an intensive care ward, but maybe you're not familiar with hospitals, and this is what it looks like. This is where the care has been given. Now, when you care for patients and they are on a ventilator, so they have artificial breathing, there is a lot of parameters that you have to keep track of, because what you're doing is you're giving oxygen and you're blowing away your carbon dioxide, and therewith you influence the acid-base balance, and all these parameters. You can change almost anything in ventilation, but you have to know what the effect is on the gases in the blood, and that's why you need a point of care system. And why do you need a point of care system? Because you can send the blood to the laboratory, but even though in Dutch laboratories we can report results within the hour, that is too much time for a patient on a ventilator. You need to be informed immediately. And that's why we have these point of care blood gas systems in our hospital. Now, let me explain you a little bit about these machines. First, you have to draw blood, and you saw in the picture that for the neonate that taking blood can be a challenge, and taking blood from larger patients or adults may be less challenging, but you need to know what you're doing. This is very complicated stuff. And then you need a then you need a syringe, and this is the syringe. This is a picture of a syringe we use, and you can see that it has different components. Here is the pad with the anticoagulant that is used to prevent the blood from clotting. This little bullet is in there so that if the syringe goes into the machine, the bullet is moved mechanically by a magnet, and that way we try to, or the blood is being kept from coagulating. Now you also see this tip, which looks fancy, and I will show you how it works. When you do a blood gas analysis, you don't want gas in your blood gas analysis, because there will be exchange of gases between the blood and the air that you see at the top of this syringe. I'm sure you see it, but I pointed out to you here, there's air in this syringe, and you need to get the air out. Now, how do you get the air out? You push it through the filter, and the filter lets out the air basically until it clogs with blood, and now you have a closed system without air. So I told you a bit about the syringe, and I show you here a picture of 18 blood gas machines that we put in the hospital in June 2018. 18 machines, because we have 4 adult intensive care units in the hospital. We have machines in the operating rooms. We have machines at the cardiology department. We have machines at the ER, the emergency department, and we have these machines in the laboratory. Now I'll come back to the you don't just put these machines in an operating room and walk away. I'll come back to all the things that you have to organize when you implement a point of care system. But first, I will go to the second part of my talk. And I told you that the second part will be about the risks of point of care analysis. Analysis at the point of care is high risk care. Why is it high risk care? What I show you here is a diabetes patient who takes his blood sugar with a small device, which is, and in fact, until 12 years ago, these devices, we had hundreds of them in the hospital for patients on wards. Now, if the patient is at home, he uses this blood glucose meter to measure his glucose, and then he gets a result, and he or she knows how much insulin he must give himself. The patient knows how much insulin to give himself. Now you know that insulin is a deadly drug, really. If you give somebody too much insulin, somebody dies. And if a patient injects himself too much insulin, there is a risk of severe damage or even death. So giving insulin is high risk. Now, in 2008, in April 2008, the board of directors of this hospital, but also all hospitals in the Netherlands, received a letter from the Dutch Staatstoezicht op de Volksgezondheid, the Inspectie voor de Gezondheidszorg, which is the Dutch healthcare authority. And the letter was about point of care testing. Now, what the letter said, and this is in Dutch, and you see only half of it, I'm afraid. But what the letter said, that there had been rather large differences between glucose measured on point of care machines, excuse me, on point of care machines compared to glucose measured in the laboratory. And the difference could be 15 millimoles. That's enormous. And this, unfortunately, had led to doses of insulin that were administered, large doses of insulin that were administered, and led to severe damage. One patient actually died, another patient had brain damage, which was irreversible. So this is why the Dutch authorities said that you should not just use these kind of devices, these small glucose meters in the hospital. They did research, and they concluded that the meters themselves were not the problem. The problem was that the people who were using the meters did not know about the risks. And the other problem was that patient-related factors could be of influence on the results. And you must be aware of that. If you measure a high blood glucose and you just administer the insulin just like that, you may induce serious harm in your patient. Now, what was the conclusion? Why did the glucose, why was it falsely elevated? Well, it was falsely elevated because people, and especially nurses, they tend to eat fruit, and in fruit or fruit juices, or in infusion or in sweets and other things, there's a lot of sugar. And these machines don't measure your blood glucose, they measure sugar. They measure fructose, which is in fructose as well, which is in apples and oranges and all kinds of other foodstuffs. So if you're not aware that fruit sugars on your finger or on the finger of the patients may induce a falsely elevated glucose result, then you may administer too much glucose, or too much insulin, whereas the patient actually has a normal glucose. So this is a real risk. So the authorities said, well, this is a high risk. This is a high risk thing. And if you fulfill all conditions, you can use point of care measuring systems in the hospital. But if you cannot fulfill these conditions, the laboratory should measure your glucose. Now, you must know that in this hospital, we measure about 200,000 glucoses a year. So you understand that we would like to measure it with a point of care machine rather than doing 200,000 extra venipunctures on patients which may need their blood glucose measured 4 times every day. So we had to implement a professional system, and this is what it looks like, and it's from Roche. It's used in a lot of hospitals in this country, but this is a professional meter. Actually, the strips that are used are exactly the same as in these very small meters that are used by patients. The professionality is more in the system around it. You can see that this meter is in a docking station, and you understand that the docking station has a connection to the laboratory information system. Now, the authorities said that you have to be educated before you can use this system. So the system must know when somebody has passed his exam. So you have to identify the user of the system. And then you have to identify I'm sorry about this. This is automatically, it's taken from another presentation. And then the patient has to be identified and checked with the hospital information system. Now, this may look easy, but at the time when we had to start doing this, patient identification was not implemented in this hospital, and user IDs were not present. So we had to organize all of that. And then we had to organize the whole system where the meters connect to docking stations, which are connected to a data manager, which is connected to the laboratory information system, which has a connection to this hospital information system and the hospital patient administration. And all these systems have to communicate with each other. This is a big challenge. It was a big challenge, but we did it. Then, very importantly, the authorities said that we needed a protocol in which we would explain how to measure glucose, and the protocol should explain all the caveats or the risks of fruit sugars. So we did that. We sat together with nurses and doctors and we made a protocol. And then we had to set up a system where we teach all the nurses and all the doctors in the hospital how to do this. Now, you see here that in 2019, which is actually only a year ago, we implemented an electronic learning management system. But of course, in 2008 and 2009, we didn't have a electronic learning system, so we had to make it ourselves. We made a system where you could apply for training, and then you were invited to come to a meeting, and then you had to be, you were educated there, and then you had to take a test. And when you did take the test and you passed it, then your ID, or you would get access to the machines through your ID. So we organized these bigger sessions where we explain the whole thing. We organized smaller sessions where we explained the whole thing. We even organized very small sessions to educate these nurses. But there are so many people there are 13,000 people that work in the hospital. I don't know how many nurses, but there are a few thousand. So we can give these educational sessions, but we need other people to see if the nurses understand what they are doing. So what we did, we had set up a train-the-trainer kind of system where head nurses would take the exams of the nurses, and then also we devised a system for retraining, because the authorities said that periodically everybody has to be retrained just to know for certain that people still understand and still know the risks of glucose measurements. So that's what we all organized because the inspectors said so. Let me take you through the numbers. We have 120 glucose meters in our hospital on 70 wards. We trained 140 trainers, and we trained 2,700 nurses. And that's just for glucose. For blood gases, we have 47 machines. We have 20 for the adult patients, and we have 27 for the neonates that I showed you. These are used in 22 yards. We have 65 trainers that we trained, and we have 1,250 users that use them. Now, there's also a system for coagulation. That's a little less chemistry, but still it's point of care analysis. We have 5 meters, on 4 awards, we have 11 trainers, and we have 100 users. So this is all to show you how elaborate point of care is, and what the hospital has to go through when you implement a new point of care system. Now, of course, I don't do this personally. I have a point of care team, and especially important is Jeroen van Leeuwen, who is sitting here, who is our point of care manager. And without him, we wouldn't have been able to do all this. This is this is the third part of my talk. I get to the third part of my talk now. A few remarks on regulation. I told you about the letter of the Dutch authorities that is very important, but there is other regulations that are very important as well. When you implement a new system or a medical device in a hospital, you need to comply with the 34, I think, conditions that de Convenant Veilige Toepassing Medische Technologie contains. So there are conditions that you have to apply with when you introduce new machines, new devices in the hospital, and point of care devices are new devices in the hospital. So you have to comply with all the things here. We as a laboratory have to comply with this ISO norm, the 15189. But when we do point of care testing, it's
I'm sorry, Joost. I have to inform you that time is running out a little bit, so maybe you can try to finalize your presentation.
Well, I am finalizing it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's no problem. Please continue.
I'm trying to find these are the last slides.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
So we have this ISO. And this is new. This is the regulation on in vitro diagnostics, which will have a huge impact on hospitals and have to be implemented fully by the year of 2022. Now, if you hear this, you may think that point of care is too complicated, and if you start on something new, a good idea, and you want to work it out, you'll never get it into hospital care. But I hope to have conveyed you that you can look at it in a positive way as well. There's a lot of things you have to do when you implement point of care, but it is very important, and I'm sure there will be new developments in the near future, and I'm sure some of you might even contribute to that. And with that, I will end my talk. Thank you.
Yeah, well, Joost, thank you for your presentation and sharing with us all these interesting pictures about intensive care units and hospital bedsides pictures. I was wondering, first for the audience, there are already some questions in the chat and in the Q&A, so please fill up all your questions, and then we will ask Danny and Adriana to give the questions to Joost, but put them in the chat or in the Q&A, and then we will come back to your questions right away. But first, let me ask a question, Joost. The Dutch health authorities have chosen to say to you, you have to train your nurses. But I think I was wondering why have you been chosen to train the nurses? Because if in the normal situation you bring your samples to a laboratory, and in the laboratory we have trained technicians to do these tests. So I was wondering, can we also bring the technicians to the bedside and let them do the bedside testing?
Yes, but you could. You need a lot of technicians.
Yeah.
We use almost 3,000 nurses. So there's a lot of technicians, and these glucoses are necessary. You have to do this before you take a meal. So these are all at 7 in the morning or at 11:30 in the morning, and you have to do them all at the same time. So no, I don't think that is a very good idea. Would be easier from the training side.
Okay, thank you. Adriana and Dene, is there something going on in the chat?
Yes, there is, Ben. Joost, in the beginning of your presentation, you showed a picture of a baby with a lot of cables connected. Yep. And the baby does not have a lot of blood. And the audience wondered if the sensitivity of these point-of-care instruments, is that good enough for only a small drop of blood?
Yes, it's all micro techniques. It's miniaturized. There are some. We have some differences between point-of-care systems and real laboratory analysis, if you may, and these are. We don't understand them fully, but we know they're there. We talk about that with our physicians. Sometimes the sample is sent to the lab just to cross-check. But in general, yes, these analyses are very accurate.
Okay, very good to hear. And also in the chat box, there's a question about COVID, of course. Now we have COVID in the world, and are there new point-of-care analysis equipment since that COVID arrived, or did they change your job?
Well, the COVID and laboratory is, as you know, a bit difficult. I try to avoid COVID and point-of-care testing, but I thought maybe there would be a question about it. If you do COVID point-of-care testing, as in the antigen test that has been marketed a few weeks ago, you would also need a system where you get the results back to patients and back to the physicians. So what we do is we do use these tests. We do two tests. We use the PCR tests for COVID detection, like the GGD. And we use these antigen tests for our own, for hospital personnel who needs to work that day. If they have symptoms, they go through, they take both tests really. Now the sensitivity of the antigen tests are less sensitive. Less sensitive, specific, but they are good enough for personnel. So yes, we use these tests, but we don't use them in a point-of-care setting.
Okay,
so we
understandable.
use them centrally. People come to a central place where the test, where the swabs are taken, and then do both tests.
Ben, do we have time? Because we have more questions.
Oh yeah, if there is an interesting question in the chat, please go ahead.
Yeah, because there was also another one, and that was you showed a lot of equipment and also about all the software impact that it had on the hospital. And somebody wondered, all these investments, are they just organized by the hospital, or did you get an extra budget for this point of care instrumentation?
No, yes, somebody pays for these systems, but yes, this is one of the problems that you face when you want to introduce point of care analyses at this scale. Yes, we solved this problem, but yes, there's a lot of money involved.
Good to hear that it's just possible.
It's still possible, but you must understand that if you that the costs of not delivering these tests might be enormous compared to the cost of doing the test. The problem for the laboratory is that these are generally seen as laboratory costs, whereas the costs of not doing it are costs in another budget. So that's always the discussions that we have.
Okay, very good. There was another question in the chat box. Do you have already non-invasive techniques applied for point of care analysis?
Not yet. And I'm seeing the chat box, and it's there is indeed our systems where there's a connection between an insulin pump and a blood glucose device. On a patient level, but not on something that the laboratory organizes at the big scale. No.
Okay. And the last one that I see for glucose and insulin, there are automated devices for patients, isn't it?
I thought you were referring to that.
Okay, very good.
Okay, Danny, is there another question in the Q&A, for instance? Or have we answered all the questions from the audience?
Yeah,
I think even people even people watching on YouTube, if you are connected via an account, you can also put questions in the Q&A there. So maybe you can have a look there if there is important questions from the audience.
Nothing more, Ben.
Nothing more. Okay,
No.
Well, then I like to thank Joost for this fantastic presentation and all the answers that you gave to us. Of course, at the end of each presentation, we give you a present, but the present will be sent to your home. So here is the present. And thank you for this really interesting talk. Now I'd like to introduce the next speaker. The next speaker is Ruben Kranenburg. Ruben, you are already there. Welcome.
You can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Really good. Ruben, let me introduce you. Ruben is working as an analytical chemist in the narcotics laboratory from the Dutch police in Amsterdam. And as I understand, they analyze about 4,000 samples each year from different occasions on, for instance, cocaine or other interesting components. And of course, it's also helpful if you can bring these identification tests to the crime scenes where potentially powders are found and so forth. And that is the talk that Ruben will give to us, and he will explain how specific techniques can be used to measure on the crime scenes. Ruben, can I give the floor to you?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ben. Yeah. Well, welcome everybody. I'm going to speak about the approach we developed for on-scene detection of cocaine with a very small scanner. I have one currently here. It's a Bluetooth controlled device via a mobile phone. Let me share the screen with you. Oh, my name is Ruben Kranenburg, as Ben just introduced me. I work at the Amsterdam Police Laboratory, a coordinator of that laboratory, but besides that, I'm also doing my PhD student part-time at the University of Amsterdam in the group of Professor Arjen van Asten. My talk, first I will start with a brief introduction about the cocaine market, the illicit cocaine market. They continue with the forensic laboratory testing process. So how do we currently test all those substances we encounter? Then introduce the near-infrared spectroscopy-based approach we developed, its applicability on case samples, and finish with some conclusions and an outlook. Well, cocaine market. As probably most of you will know, cocaine originates from a plant that mainly grows in the Latin American area, Colombia, etc. And you can see those big orange arrows here. And that depicts the transportation routes internationally. As you can see, many of those, there's this small tiny country here, which is in a dark green, which is a major trade hub of cocaine. And that's the country we currently are, the Netherlands. So the Netherlands is a very important trade hub of the global cocaine market, and a lot of cocaine coming in the Rotterdam harbor and also the Antwerp harbor in Belgium. So the cocaine globally, there's over 300,000 soccer fields of cocaine cultivated, so 300,000 soccer fields of cocaine plants growing. That leads to almost 2,000 tons of cocaine annually. And also by the United Nations, they report an increasing trend. So it's an increasing trend, there's more cocaine coming every year. What's also very important to know is that the cocaine we currently see, the cocaine in the market is not 100% pure. It's not 100% cocaine. It's often cutted, adulterated, mixed with other components. So its average purity is above half of it, 50% to 70% cocaine. So then, if you look at the forensic laboratory process, the way we test it, it's good to know that there's actually two parts. You have the crime scene, you have the laboratory. Well, and the cocaine is very often not seized within the laboratory, not the police laboratory. Well, it's seized on scene. At the suspect site, at the crime scene, you find some suspected white powder. And there are some indicative testing performed. So there are some tests, like this colorimetric test. It gives, well-known television maybe, it gives a blue color, and that's the first indication that it's possibly a controlled substance, that possibly cocaine is present. And then you have your laboratory, the police laboratory, and there the confirmative testing for the court evidence is performed, which is mainly performed by GCMS. What we have there, what you need is you need to transport your material to the laboratory. And of course, there's a lot of, it's time consuming, there's a lot of costs involved, there's a lot of paperwork for your chain of custody, chain of evidence, and also there's some inevitable manipulation. You have to put some package around the material, you have to transport it, so it's not very time efficient approach. But if you look at all those on-scene applications, those colorimetric tests are very old, already 100 years old, those tests. But if you look at the market, there has been some shift. You observe some shift. And several handheld devices came to market. For instance, you have this infrared device. There's also handheld Raman devices. And also some very small devices like this one, which is a portable near-infrared spectrometer that you can control via your smartphone. So the device I'm going to talk about today. So that raises some questions for our forensic process. Questions about what could we do with it? What is its applicability? What's the evidential value? Could we use it as an indication only to determine if we want to seize the material, or maybe could we even use it as a court evidence? Well, if you want to answer those questions, it's very important that you need to assess the selectivity of all those devices, the limit of detection of all those devices. And also you have some more management-like total process questions about where to apply those devices. And maybe you could only ship those to some specialized crime scene investigation departments or the border security teams, or maybe if there are really cheap devices, you can supply them to every single police officer in the Netherlands or in Amsterdam by using their smartphone. And then in the end, and this is totally future music, but there are already such devices with the near infrared implemented in a smartphone. And then if you have it in your smartphone, you can take a scan. Then ultimately, if you assess everything, and it's future music now, but then maybe like the breath analysis for the alcohol, the police officer can just scan the material, the data goes into a cloud, there's some identification process, the judge will see that and can go for a conviction that way. So then you eliminate the lab, you don't need the lab for that purpose anymore, which will mean a lot of total process efficiency. But that's future music. But first you need to assess the first step, near infrared spectroscopy, so that the approach we developed and what we did and what we assessed. First, let me introduce you near infrared spectroscopy, a spectroscopic technique that uses a part of the electromagnetic spectrum between 700 and 2500 nanometers, and also good to know that it mainly uses the diffuse reflection analysis. As probably most of you will know, is that traditional spectroscopic techniques use absorbance spectroscopy. So if your lamp, your light source on one side of the sample, your detector on the other side, you measure the absorbance. But for reflection analysis, you have both your detector and your lamp, the light source on the same side of your sample, and you analyze the reflection. And it's called diffuse reflection, since that sample could also be something like a powder, solid-like sample. I'll come back to that later. Then if you look at such a near-infrared spectra, this is an example of cocaine. You can see some quite interesting spectral features present that might possibly be selective for cocaine or other substances. Zooming in at the spectra, this the left part on my screen, this is the visible light, but not very informative. Says something about the color of the material. But this is the full near-infrared spectra. But this spectra I took with this device. As you can see, it's still quite big. It's handheld, but you can put maybe one in a van. But in the end, it is still expensive. It's several 10,000s of euros for this device. So we're not going to ship such a device to every single police officer. But there's more on the market. There's also devices like this one, handheld near device. It uses a more confined spectral area of the near-infrared spectrum, but it's also cheaper. This is several thousands of euros, still not very cheap. And also this device, which is the cheapest device on the market, only several hundreds of euros per device. It also uses a very small part of the infrared spectra. You can see only some minor spectral features here. But in the end, this is a device that has the potential to be implemented in things like a smartphone or handheld scanner, and it's cheap enough to be supplied to a lot of police officers. So we decided to deliberately investigate what is possible with such a small device. Are there any possibilities to detect cocaine with this type device? So coming back to that diffuse reflection analysis, I told you, if you analyze powder samples, you will notice some scattering effects. If you look at the raw data, and this is a replicate of a lot of cocaine scans, what you can see is that there is some signal offset, which is due to the signal intensity differences, since there is variation in all those particle size of the powder, the way you analyze it. So you have to do something on this signal to use it. And that's called spectral preprocessing. So if you have your raw signal, and this is from different types of cocaine and also different other cutting agents, other compounds, traditional way to do it is called SNV, standard normal variate preprocessing. Basically what you do is you divide every single data point in your spectra by the standard deviation of every spectra. And as you can see here, in that way, all those spectra gets much better aligned. Well, if you additionally, you can still see there's almost minor spectral features. If you want to put more emphasis on the spectral features, you could also, for instance, apply a taken derivative. So that's what we did. We applied the standard normal variate, and also we applied a derivative on the data. And that way you can see that all those replicates from various compounds give selective different spectral signals. So that's the first step. And then we had to think about a model. Well, what we want to assess is the robustness of a model. So we have to take multiple scanners in account, and also I need to think about the harmonized methods. Also, we want this model to be representative for actual cocaine samples. So we have to work with actual samples. And also we want it to be a rapid procedure. So we're looking for some way of automated processing, because if it's a handheld device aimed for on-scene use, then you don't want the police officer to wait a day before the laboratory report is coming back. So what we did is we teamed up with a lot of forensic partners, Dutch Governmental Institute, for example, a Netherlands Forensic Institute, the Dutch Customs Laboratory, and together we made a large set of samples. So we got 3 sets: a set of cocaine samples at different concentrations, different types, also a set of negative samples containing of various cutting agents, other common pharmaceuticals, other white powdered substances you might encounter on the street, and some set of substances that we prepared ourselves, which was cutted cocaine. So we diluted the cocaine at low level, high level. And since we partnered with all those institutes, we came up with 15 scanners, 15 instruments, over 10 operators, and that in total led to a set of over 10,000 scans from the samples. Also important to know that this is the way how we analyzed it. We put the sample in a white glass file and just put it on top of the scanner and took the spectra. So that's what we did. So we and this is the result. This is what we got back. And then in green, what you can see is there's 2 types of cocaine. In green, you can see the cocaine hydrochloride salt, HCl, which is the snorting cocaine or snuif cocaine in Dutch. In red, you can see cocaine base, which is the crack cocaine, the type of cocaine you usually smoke. And in blue, light blue, you can see all those other variations, cutting agents, different compounds. What you could also see is that all those replicate scans from, for example, all those cocaine HCl samples, they do not form a narrow line. You can see some variations in it. And that's due that since cocaine is not a 100% pure sample, it's mixed, it's adulterated with other components. So then we have to think about the model. What type of model should we want to design? And as I said, the set of cocaine is not 100% pure. This is the actual cocaine market. For instance, it's quite normal that you encounter a substance that contains like 40% of cocaine, but that's cutted, it's diluted with 60% of a deep white powder, like caffeine powder. But on the other hand, and this is still an illicit substance, a controlled substance, but on the other hand, you could also encounter pure white powder, like caffeine powder, or maybe caffeine powder mixed with 40% paracetamol. And as you can imagine, both those samples, and this one is not controlled and this one is, they both contain a lot of spectral features originating from caffeine. So with our data set, what we noticed is that the traditional chemometric models for discriminant analysis, discrimination of cocaine versus the negative samples, they won't work. They provided too many false positives. So principal component analysis, partially squared discriminant analysis, that didn't work. So we could think about some other approach. We came up with a multi-stage model based on K nearest neighbors. So K nearest neighbors, what is it? Well, there's 2 types of it. One is based on correlations, so it's focusing on similarities among spectra, and the other one is focusing on differences, differences among spectra. And well, this quick example is if you've got a green bottle like this and you don't know what it is, well, then one way to do it is you just take all bottles you see and you're looking at similarities and differences, and you can see, well, those are the most different, so most likely this bottle is one of those, one of this class. So you could also do something like that with the spectra, our spectra. This is our model, so all the over 10,000 scans we took. And they're organized, or they're sorted by, these are all cocaine HCl samples arranged by concentration. These are all the cocaine-based samples arranged by concentration. So this is the high concentrated cocaine base, this is the lower concentrations, and these are all those negatives. Then for every single, we take one reference scan, and we do this for every single sample. But for example, for this, it's a high concentration cocaine-based sample. You can calculate all those distances, so all those differences. you see, and then you can see that the smallest differences, which you could also already expect, the smallest differences is for all those other high concentration cocaine-based samples. As you can also see that all those negative samples, they are much different, much farther away. The value is much higher, and also all the cocaine HCl, the other type of cocaine samples, are much more distant. Here's another example for a low concentration cocaine salt sample, cocaine HCl sample. As you can see that it's, you can call it the neighbors, the nearest neighbors are those samples, which are also low concentration cocaine salt samples, and also these. This was our own reference set, also prepared at low concentration cocaine HCl. So this is perfectly in line. And here you could also see that those negatives, well, they're not as close as the other ones, but they're still coming close, which can be explained that this low concentration cocaine sample also contains a lot of other substances, which could be those. This is the other approach, the correlations. In this way, 1 is the perfect number. You look at the correlations, and here you can see the same type of trend, with the nearest neighbors being the ones that are most alike. Well, if you're going to develop such a model, also think about, you have this red line, which is a threshold. And for example, in this situation, this is a -1, and it's a quite unique -1. So it basically has no near neighbors and no neighbors. There's no other single compound that you can say is an actual neighbor. But if you're just looking at the ones, if you sort them, the ones with the smallest distance, well, then maybe you could say that this one is a near neighbor. So you should apply some sort of threshold. This red line, you say, well, if it's above this line, then the model is inconclusive, and only if it's below this line, then you can call it the nearest neighbor, a neighbor. Then what you come up with, in our case, both models, you got the top 9, a top 9 of best neighbors, best matching spectra, that in total will lead to a top 18 or less if you have those inconclusives. And you then just do a voting on the neighbors, a majority voting. So if you have the most of cocaine, then you can say it's a cocaine sample. So same like this. So then if you look at the result of our model, what we noticed is that we got a quite correct, quite nice classification, also some nice concentration correlation for 99% correct. However, 31%, which is a lot of our data sets, came back as inconclusive. There was no result obtained. And that could be explained that if there are no neighbors, no nearest neighbors, the model was inconclusive. And we saw that mainly for all those unique substances. If you got a unique substance in that negative set, no neighbors, then the model was inconclusive, was not able to predict what it was. And it was also true for some cocaine, which was cutted, adulterated in a quite unique way. It was mixed with a substance we don't see very often. So we need to look at an additional step. We need something more in our model. Look at the model we developed this far. We start with that spectral preprocessing. We also did some outlier removal, principal component analysis, and then we have those 2 types of nearest neighbors models with the majority voting that gives us identification and predicted concentration. But we need an additional model, and we came up with a model based on artificial neural network. We use that for classification as a first step. That will tell us are we dealing with the cocaine HCl type spectra, a base spectra, or neither. And then we go for next step, which is a Barrett tree ensemble. We use it for regression, predicts a concentration, a cocaine concentration. So that's the second step. But we also wanted, that model to be less important. So if you have suspect material, well, you first have your nearest neighbor models. Is that if that model gives you a result, cocaine concentration, then that's the final result. Only if this model was inconclusive due to the threshold, then we shift to that second model, the artificial neural network model, and let that model give us a result. What we also got, since this way of scanning is very, very rapid, we you can easily take a lot of replicate scans. And it's very typical that you just take 5 scans of the same sample. So for every single spectrum, we got a result. And then also at the sample level, you can apply that majority voting. Like the same they did in the United States for Georgia, you can vote for Biden and for Trump. Well, we also do it in a much more rapid way, a couple of milliseconds, For our samples, you count the number of positives, number of negatives, and if you take 5 scans and 5 say it's cocaine and 1 say it's non-cocaine, then the majority counts it's a cocaine positive sample. So that's the model we developed. Well, then we had to look at the performance of the model. How could we use it? How important is it? But if you want to assess this performance, first, nice question. First, you need to ask yourself, what do we want the model to use for? What is important for us? Is it 0 false positives, which might be the case if you're going to drug test on festivals, and if you're eventually not going to send the substance to the lab anymore, and the suspect gets a fine, you seize the material, you throw it away, and that's it. Then it's very unwanted that you have a false positive result. But the other way around, maybe you want 0 false negatives, which might be the case at harbor testing, all those containers and bulk group testing. In that case, a false positive might, you will always send the material to the lab for confirmation. So if you have a false positive in your first test, it's not really a problem, since you will always send the material to the lab, and the lab will will see that. It's only false positives will mean a bit more caseload, a bit more work for the laboratory. But here, if you have a false negative, you may leave a serious crime undetected. You might miss a big stash of cocaine. Or maybe you want some optimum in between. So if you look back at those results, this is the first situation. If you want no false positives, then you could apply thresholds something like here. So not a single compound that doesn't contain cocaine is predicted above this line, but it comes with a price that a lot of, in this case, low concentration cocaine samples are below this line. So you will miss them. You will deliberately call them false negatives. In our model, this is 10%. You could also go for this threshold. You can see that not a single cocaine containing sample is missed, but that comes with the price that 30% of the non-cocaine containing samples are false positive. Or maybe you want to optimize it. You could also, what we did, you plot the true positive rate and the false positive rate, and you can find an optimum here, which is an optimum where you have around 1% false positive and false negative, and you can find that optimum at the 90% threshold, which is in line with the actual cocaine market, since those type of cocaine samples are very rarely encountered. The usual cocaine is, contains 50, 40, 50, 60% of cocaine. But the important aspect here is that those thresholds, you can see the red X's here, it's adjustable. You can just think about it and you can put your own threshold you want in the model. It's an adjustable model. But if we look at the model performance, so this is from our training set, to mention that it was fully cross-validated on a sample level. So put all replicates of the same sample in the same segment. If you test it with this threshold, we came up for this first model, our k-nearest model, with around 99% true positive and true negative. However, that model only provided results, and not for all samples, for a limited set of samples. And as said before, 31% of the data set was inconclusive. So then if you look at that next model, the artificial neural network-based model, you can see that its figures are quite lower, 96, 97%, but it's more fair if you not look at all samples, but only look at those samples in which that model was actually used. And there the figures are even less, and 80%, 97%, 80% true positive. A reason for that is that only the most difficult samples that were inconclusive by this first model were predicted by the second step, the second model. So then I come to the near final part, is applicability, since this was our training model. So we went to the lab and virtually worked in the illicit drug laboratory. So we took some case samples, took some replicate scans for it, and also from this set, if we projected it back on our model, we came back with over 90% true positive and 96% true negative. Quite nice numbers from indicative testing. With some false positives due to an amphetamine mixed sample, which was not in the model, and also some diltiazem, which is a more unique cutting agents. We don't see it very often. And false negatives came back for low concentration cocaine samples. Also good to know that most inconclusive results, we see those for the novel substances. If you have a substance that is not yet in your model, then well, for sure you will miss it, since there are no near neighbors, no near matching spectra in your model. So that concludes my talk, brings me to the conclusions. Well, showed you that if you look at cocaine, it leads to some minimal spectral signals in this part of the near spectra. But if you use spectral pre-processing and apply some chemometric models, some machine learning models, you can still exploit those features and use them for cocaine detection. It will show you that cocaine detection is feasible in case samples with 97% true positive and 98% true negative in the rate. If we apply a weight percent threshold, which might be applicable if it's very rare that you encounter this type of samples in actual forensic situations. Well, limitations arise at low concentrations and also for unknown spectra. And I showed you that you could optimize your model by changing the threshold. Well, are we there yet? Well, bless you. Oh, well, this model, if you want to read more, the work was published in Drug Testing and Analysis very recently. If you want to read more, you can find it here. It's available open access, so everybody can click on the link and find this paper. But are we there yet? Well, sure not. You can do more. So next step we're currently working on is that, well, if you have this model, and in the end, now if we test some case sample, we will always go to the forensic laboratory. So you will eventually always have your GCMS results. And even if this model was wrong, well, the GCMS will tell you. So what you could do is that you update your metadata and then include all those new spectra in your model. So that way you can train your model and create a better model. Also, this way, the model can adapt to market trends. If in future cocaine is scattered with a new type of substance and that becomes very popular and a lot of criminals are going to use that substance, well, first the model might be inconclusive, but in the end, if you update it and you train the model on more spectra, it might become better and better. Also, there are limitations. In this model, we only used in glass vials, worked in glass bottles. Well, glass is quite near transparent, so that's quite easy. But in reality, that's not the case, and the cocaine is often packed in plastic bags or wrappers or bolloges, so wrapped in plastic, like you can see here, and that might influence the spectrum. But it's also unwanted that you want a police officer to open everything, because that's also poses a health risk. So it might be very beneficial if you can analyze it through the packaging. We're currently looking at that. And also in our application, we use this device with a very confined, very limited spectral wavelength range, but there are more devices on the market. Also, some are already integrated in the handheld, in the mobile phone, in the smartphone, and some other devices use some other spectral wavelength range, which might be more interesting or give some more selective spectral features for cocaine. And also, since we work in a forensic setting, important aspects is to look at data safety and data integrity, because if you're going to upload all those spectral data in the cloud, and well, it's only spectral data, there's no information about suspects or case numbers, things like that, but still you want your data to be safe and you don't want anyone to manipulate it. There's also an important aspect if you're going to work this way about data safety. So that concludes my talk. To thank a lot of partners, since we teamed up with the Dutch governmental laboratories. Especially, I want to point out those guys from the Wageningen Food Safety Research who helped a lot with developing the data model. Joska Verdouwen, he did this for a master project at the University of Amsterdam. And a lot of people who helped from the RIVM, the Dutch Public Health Safety Institute, Dutch Customs Laboratory, and the Netherlands Forensic Institute. So thank you very much for your attention.
Well, Ruben, thank you for sharing this information with us and explaining how this CO near device works and how you can build a model. I was really amazed that you said, well, we can build this into your mobile phones, and then every policeman can measure cocaine in every powder in the future.
Yeah, still totally future music, but well, I hope that I really see that might be a trend. All those indicative polarimetric testing, and eventually I see all those small devices come to market.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is that we heard Joost this morning talking about education of all the nurses in the point of care analysis. So now I think you have to think of training all the policemen in point of care analysis stuff. Okay, good. I take a look at Danny, because I have the feeling the chat is quite active, isn't it?
Yeah, but YouTube as well. So
Okay, really
we
good.
have a lot of questions. And also about the accuracy, sometimes we can, by the way, also see who asked the question. This question is from Sophie Bruinsma, and she wondered how accurate and how reliable the results of the infrared spectra are when you are using a smartphone. It's a small screen. So what about the resolution?
Yeah, well, basically, you're only using the smartphone as a device to send your spectra to a cloud. So the data processing, you don't do that on your smartphone. What you do is you upload all those data in a cloud, and there you can just take the raw spectral data and you process it separately. So the device we developed, you download it from the cloud, and in R there's some R code, and there you do all those spectral processing, and so that's not performed on the smartphone. And what you need to think is a sort of feedback mechanism that processing takes place somewhere in the cloud, and then you get your results back on the screen. So you don't currently look at the spectra at your smartphone. Yeah, you can look at it, well, once you look at them at my laptop or the desktop computer.
Okay. And also you made a lot of people enthusiastic about your work. For example, Tanya Petkova, she's wondering if you could mention 2 companies in the Netherlands that would be open to recruit candidates for forensic chemistry field after graduation.
Oh, yeah, I know there's, I know we have the forensic science master also here at the University of Amsterdam located. And yeah, the forensic field is not that big. You have the Dutch Netherlands Forensic Institute, the NFV, which is a major player. Also the Dutch Customs Laboratory in the Customs, there are some people working. But yeah, well, in the end, I think that this, the problem of popular field, a lot of people want to work here. Also, if I have a subject for an internship, I have a lot of candidates, and well, I'm lucky that I can pick the best one. But I think it's also good to realize that forensics is bigger than only drug analysis, drug testing, and especially in this collaboration, we teamed up with the guys from Wageningen from the food safety. And before upfront, I didn't realize that they also do a lot of like forensic testing. They already use this type of handheld devices for testing eggs and cheese and food stuff, also for contaminants or for fake. And so it's also a way of forensic testing.
Yeah, clear. And are there specific documents or certificates required to work as a forensic chemist?
No, yeah, well, I myself, I studied analytical chemistry at the first Hogeschool Alkmaar, it's now called in Holland, University of Applied Sciences, and then I did my master's at the Vrije Universiteit, and now my PhD in analytical chemistry, University of Amsterdam. So I personally don't have any forensic background. Yeah, there are some, but yeah, limited certificates that you use that you need if you work in the police laboratory. But, well, no, it's analytical chemistry in the end.
And we had some questions about the analysis itself, your study. Would there be matrix effects possible that disrupt the readings, for example?
Oh yes, sure, yeah. And you have to realize that although this is a very nice study with such a small spectrometer, there are a lot of limitations, and one of those effects, use spectroscopy, very small wavelength range, and also that near the infrared signal can be blocked if you have, for instance, colored substances, something simple like that. We use this study on white powders. But we also tried ecstasy, MDMA, ecstasy pills, which is often in tablet form, often have a nice color, dark color, and you can see a lot of matrix effects if it's already a colored substance.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Abdul wondered what happens to the drugs when they have been analyzed. Are they destroyed, dumped? Is there a procedure to handle this?
Oh yeah, sure. Very strict procedures about that. Well, most of it is burned. it's destroyed, you don't want it anyway. But in a forensic setting, every suspect, yeah, you have your right for counter expertise. You can request your attorney to send it to another laboratory. So there's always a small part of the material is stored for that purpose. So a small part is stored for several years if you want to ask a second laboratory to test it again, but most of it is destroyed by the police.
Okay. Do we still have time, Ben? Or
Yeah, for 1 or 2 questions. Yeah.
okay. Because there were also multiple questions about this subject. You talked a lot about cocaine analysis with your equipment, but could you also analyze other drugs or do a multi-drug analysis?
Yeah, what we noticed is that with this device, I think we are quite lucky that cocaine has some spectral features in this small near wavelength range. We also tested MDMA and related substances or the new psychoactive substances. What we saw is that they have very limited features in that specific range. So for MDMA, this device is not suitable. But there are more devices on the market, and we noticed with that broad range instrument that there are some spectral features also for MDMA and all those designer drugs and synthetic drugs. So it's possible, but not with this device. And we're also thinking about approaches about combining various instruments. If you have all those handheld devices, you could also think about you've got various instruments like infrared spectrometer and a Raman spectrometer, and they do some data fusion or combine the evidence from the separate devices. But well, this is not the solution for everything. It works fine for cocaine, but we have to think really have to be some development if you want to apply it for other substances.
Okay, yeah, that's also what I think the last question is about. If you can also identify analogs, so research chemicals or compounds that are not illegal yet, but might be in the future.
Yeah. The focus of my PhD project, it's 2 parts. One is the handheld devices, but totally the other part is all those novel substances with very minor differences in molecule like fluoroamphetamines. And usually you do use large equipment with that and some advanced processing. But spectroscopic techniques, since those mainly originating from vibrations, you can use spectroscopic techniques. But well, not in this very confined wavelength range. But you can use infrared spectroscopy for that if you have a broader wavelength device.
Okay, Danny, I think for the sake of time, we have to stop here. I'm sure there are lots and lots of more questions, but maybe we have to continue with the program. I'd like to thank Ruben for sharing all this data and explaining this device to us and how you build models. You will receive also a little present from us. Will be sent to your home. So, oops. There's your present. I think it will arrive today in the afternoon or maybe tomorrow morning. But we really like to thank you. Then we go.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah. Goodbye. And then we go for the last speaker of this morning. He is already in the picture.
Yeah.
That is Vincent Laban. Let me introduce Vincent a little bit to you. Vincent is not a chemist, but an electronical engineer from Delft. So that is really something different. But the good thing is he is working in analytical chemistry. So that's our field. Really interesting also that you have developed yourself into innovative measurements. And as I understand, in springtime you have co-founded together with your friends the company Spectrax. And Spectrax is I looked it up a little bit. I was really impressed. And of course, the talk that you are going to give us is the talk that everybody has been waiting for. And because we all want to know how are we going to fight this COVID pandemic by doing fast measurements. So can I ask you to share with us your presentation and over to you.
Let me see. I think it's working.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice. Yeah, thank you very much. First, I'd like to thank the organization for giving me this platform to tell something about what we do and our company. Also, I'd like to thank Joost and Ruben for their presentation, because actually that really links the point of care with spectroscopy in my presentation, because we are using spectroscopy as a basis for medical diagnostics. So my talk is focused on diagnostics with Raman spectroscopy as an analytical challenge, and the biggest challenge we're now facing, of course, is the pandemic, the global pandemic. So we're focusing on COVID diagnostics. Let me first go to our mission. So the company was founded indeed in the spring. Before that, I was working in nanotechnology for about 4 years. My background is not only electrical engineering, but it's also industrial design engineering. So it's a little bit broader than only electrical engineering. But in terms of learnings on chemistry level, I gained a lot of knowledge in those 4 years in nanotechnology, because using nanotechnology for analytical purposes, but also for chemistry, is quite normal now. So ranging from catalysis towards all kinds of diagnosis with nanoparticles in the bloodstream, for example. All those kind of things are happening in the nanotechnology field. And we've really focused our company on medical diagnostics only. So our goal is to make a platform to provide medical diagnostics for a lot of people, and do that in an accessible way. So what we started off was actually taking the learnings from narcotics diagnostics, like Ruben explained, but also pesticides, so food, and explosives. So together with Netherlands Forensic Institute, and took all those learnings in developing a test for viruses. Later we figured out that if we can do viruses, which is quite difficult, we can also do everything in between, from drugs or from narcotics, which have very distinctive patterns, like Ruben also showed, towards biomolecules and viruses, which are completely difficult to diagnose with Raman spectroscopy in that sense, because the bindings, and I will go later into that as well, are very different from synthetic molecules to biomolecules. But by testing a lot of viruses, we figured out that we could actually go towards medical diagnostics in a much broader range, so ranging from different pathogens like viruses, also going towards bacteria, biomarkers, and other things. And diagnostics really play a big role. As we see today with the pandemic, is that everybody's waiting on these fast tests or rapid tests or instant tests. But in the spring, normal PCR tests were also not really accessible to people. I remember that Brad Pitt, for example, he couldn't get a test in Los Angeles in April or May. So if he didn't even get access to a test, how can people in the rest of the world get access to a test? So with that in mind, we really started the company, and we wanted to build a platform that we can provide medical diagnostics for all kinds of pathogens all around the world. And it's basically a point of care test. So really also focusing on Joost, his talk. So our go-to-market was really focused on SARS-CoV-2. We started off in February by analyzing animal coronaviruses. So together with diergeneeskunde or animal health faculty in Utrecht, then we started working together with the AMC in Amsterdam to do human coronaviruses, which were not COVID. But eventually, yeah, we got our first panels of COVID virus in, I think it was at the end of March. And yeah, since then we are working around the clock to develop our test. And yeah, it's really needed. You see it every time. So we're now in the second wave for Europe, and US is also going up again. But yeah, globally the testing infrastructure is very poorly. So in the Netherlands is now gaining a lot of momentum, of course, adding a lot of PCR and rapid tests to the portfolio of hospitals and GGD's. Yeah, but worldwide it's still a big problem, and every day records are shattered again with COVID infections. So rapid testing is really needed in a massive scale. And what's happening also that the market is looking for all kinds of new testing technologies that are portable, like Ruben said, operated by mobile phones, point of care, like Joost mentioned. So not only in the lab, but also outside of the lab. So what we developed is actually a very simple test. Well, it's quite complicated. We'll go into that. But it's based on taking a swab, like a normal PCR or an antigen test, taking a swab and preparing the sample. Our sample preparation is very simple. It's putting the swab into a liquid, which is a virus transport media. And it's placed on a chip, and the chip is a nanostructured layer of a few microns thick that actually enhances the signal of Raman spectrometer. The chip is then inserted in this Raman spectrometer, and like Ruben also explained, we developed a model in the cloud that can read out the spectrums directly from the Raman spectrometer and classifies it within a few seconds. So the total measurement time of our spectrometer is 3 times 10 seconds, which makes this total amount of measurement time only 30 seconds. And with that, we have developed this test to be executable and testable below 3 minutes. So instead of waiting 48 hours or even longer on PCR results, we can get people tested in a line and they can have the results within under 3 minutes. So this is the flow that we developed, and since April, we are tackling all these different points. For today, I will go a little bit deeper into the analytical part. So diagnostics with Raman spectroscopy, and I think that's also, yeah, looking at IR spectra, that's very close. NIR is also very close, but yeah, Raman spectroscopy is a little bit different, and I will start off with telling you something about Raman spectroscopy. So Raman spectroscopy was actually discovered, or mostly discovered in the 30s of last century. And what it actually is that by shining a specific laser onto a molecule combination or a composition of molecules, specific bindings light up with different scattering profiles. So by shining a light, for example, or a laser on a molecule of cocaine, for example, like Ruben explained, you can get a distinctive pattern or a fingerprint of that molecule. And it's in essence a laser lens setup, a filter setup, and a receptor or a chip that reads out the emitted light or scattered light. And Raman spectrometers are built from desktop devices all the way down to handheld devices. And we're now actually looking at potential ways to get it integrated in mobile phones. That's still not happening at this moment because the lenses are quite specific and expensive. But I really think that looking at the developments in hardware of spectrometers, that will happen soon. So then all the way down from the lab, you can get it to mobile phones as well. So we use portable Raman spectrometers. Exactly like Ruben also explained, this spectrometry technology can be used to detect all kinds of molecules within powders or liquids. So Raman spectroscopy is used in a lot of applications, ranging from pesticides, explosives, and narcotics as most straightforward ones, but also going towards biomedical applications, pharmaceutical quality testing, milk quality testing, all kinds of other quality related applications. In our case, we are really focusing on the medical point of care applications because we see a lot of value in this way of spectroscopy or using spectroscopy. The nice thing about Raman spectroscopy is that it's very specific. So specificity and sensitivity are super important in medical diagnostics. And the sensitivity is has to do with the quality of the laser and the receptor, but the specificity is really coming from using a specific fingerprint. So looking at viruses, for example, we've done, I think, about 7 or 8 different kinds of respiratory viruses, and it's possible to see a very nice pattern of each and every virus, which is specific. So that's very nice. Raman spectroscopy is not very sensitive. So that's why in, I think, the 70s or 80s, SERS was invented, Surface Enhanced Raman Spectroscopy. And Surface Enhanced Raman Spectroscopy allows an increase of the signal of Raman spectroscopy between, I think, 1 million and 1 billion times. So the laser is the same, the receptor is the same, but the only difference is that the signal is enhanced by a layer of, for example, gold or silver or a combination of metals. And the nice thing is that using only Raman spectroscopy, you might be able to see a fingerprint, but it's very, very subtle, or the differences are not that small. But with SERS, you can get a very high enhancement of that signal, and you can really make a fingerprint. And to the right here, you see some differences between a Raman spectrum and a SERS spectrum, which using a classification model is much easier to interpret. So you see that for biomolecule detection, SERS is used a lot, and there's a lot of literature on it for example, analyzing proteins, RNA, lipid structures, DNA has also been done. Combining, for example, PCR with SERS is a possibility. So there's a lot of applications. However, the difficulty with SERS is that making SERS substrates which are reproducible and which are affordable and which are producible in enormous quantities is quite a challenge. So looking at the performance of the chips that we developed, what we can see is that we can go, Raman spectroscopy uses all kinds of molecules to quickly distinguish between surface enhanced Raman spectroscopy chips, and then look at the quality of these chips. And the difference is really much visible in three ways. So first is the sensitivity of the layer. So what is the limit of detection of the layer? The second one is what kind of energy is needed to put into the layer to get a good reading. And the third one is reproducibility of those measurements on a single chip, and then maybe between chips as well, and then between batches as well. But let's start with the reproducibility on the chip. So in our case, we looked at rhodamine 6G as a indicator for the quality of our substrate. And what we did was we took different dilutions of rhodamine 6G and then looked at the fingerprint. And we see that in going from 10 millimolar to 0.1 millimolar, it's still possible to see differences in the spectra, or to see the specific fingerprint of rhodamine 6G, which is quite nice because this has been done with very low laser powers and low laser settings. So for us, that was quite nice. I'm not showing the spectra of viruses, by the way, because we're now working on a few publications, so that will not be in this presentation. So we use the rhodamine as an indicator. The second part, is dispersed red, and dispersed red is, for example, a molecule which is also linked to explosives, so measurements of explosives, and it also has a very distinctive pattern and very recognizable pattern. And here we see, for example, that dispersed red 10 millimolar and 1 millimolar are actually almost give the same signal, so that's quite nice. And then the 0.1 millimolar is has a very reduced signal, which means that somewhere in between going from 1 millimolar to 0.1 millimolar, or even going down maybe, there is at one point the limit of detection with this method and with our chip. So that was also quite nice because then after that we tested the reproducibility of our chip, and this was with not dispersed red or rhodamine, but this was with a biological sample. And here we see that doing 3 measurements on one chip still gives exactly the same performance. And this is very zoomed in, of course, but if you look at other chips that we tested, you could see that there was, for example, a big decrease of signal between measurements. So doing one measurement, for example, would have an effect on the layer, on the source layer, and then the second measurement and the third measurement would be very difficult to see, or the quality would go down. So in our case, the layer we use, so the sort of the enhancement layer that we created, is very stable. So you can do a lot of measurements on one chip and not have any degradation of the chip. So that was quite nice. And then we use this in exactly the same way for all the biological samples that we did. We are improving the chip quality. So looking back at the last 6 months, we started off with almost no knowledge on what the ideal layer would be. We tested some of these layers with biological samples, and they quite nicely worked. But in the last 6 months, we gained a lot of knowledge on the quality of these layers and the quality of these chips. However, we still see differences in batches. So we're not 100% there yet, because it's quite difficult to get 100% the same chips as with every production method. Scaling up is quite difficult. So what are we looking at in viruses? Because viruses obviously are quite complex biomolecules. Viruses are essentially 2 different virus possibilities, enveloped viruses and non-enveloped viruses. And the enveloped viruses is like corona virus, the ones that we're focusing on. We can look at different peaks in those spectra of viruses, and then look at specific differences in, for example, protein capsids on the surface of the virus. And yeah, this has already been done in a lot of literature studies, but we can do it at a much bigger scale because we can use hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of samples, and maybe thousands of samples. And in literature, it's very difficult to find comparable studies. So we use a Raman spectroscoper, handheld Raman spectrometers like this one, for example, from Matron. And what we did, we made custom attachments and we made custom chip holders. So when we have a sample of a swab of a person, we can deposit it on the chip and insert it in the spectrometer. We modified the software on these spectrometers with help of the spectrometer companies to be able to read them out with a mobile phone or a tablet or a computer, making it very easy. So we read it out from the device. And we do data processing directly in the cloud. So we don't use any software on the spectrometers. We don't use any software on the tablets. It's directly sent to a cloud, and we do all the processing over there. So what we also build in is a lot of quality parameters, because obviously it's a medical product. And like Joost also mentioned, the regulation of point of care is really, really strict. We are happy that we have a virus which is not classified as a high-risk pathogen. It's actually classified as a low-risk pathogen in the same way as other coronaviruses. But still, yeah, there's a lot of rules and regulations we need to be sort of caring about. When we do a classification, it's based on a machine learning model. And when we get it back, there's a qualitative and a quantitative score applied to it. And the results, positive and negative, is sent back through to the platform on the tablet. And the classification actually is similar to what Ruben explained. So we looked at different kinds of machine learning models. We have tested a lot of literature studies where they looked at false positives, false negatives. I do have to say that a lot of the literature is quite limited. So we did extremely high calculation programs, figuring out the right model, AI model for classifying them, but it's still quite a difficult task. So we're improving every day, but sample preparation and chip quality really plays a role. So this is what happening is in the cloud, and I will wrap it up soon because we still only have 3 minutes. So we can also tune the amount of false positives and false negatives that we allow to be displayed. So there's a sweet spot, like Ruben also showed. There's the B section of his graph is also something that we want to find out. So in terms of medical diagnostics, we do have to be very careful about not allowing too many false negatives. Actually, we don't want any false negatives in there. But yeah, still, it's a new technology. It's still under development, and I think at one point, we need to sort of validate the model as well as a medical diagnostics platform, and then we need to fixate the false positive and false negatives rates. So that's something that we're working on extremely hard now. We are doing a lot of tests with a lot of testing suites in the Netherlands, with GGD Amsterdam, for example, but also in hospitals. And we also developed our own testing suites together with a big PCR company in Delft. So yeah, we are working around the clock to get this on the market soon. And to wrap it up, yeah, we developed a chip based on proprietary nanotechnology. We use proven and reliable, available laser technology, the spectrometers, and we made a custom engineering machine learning tool to classify our results. And hopefully within the coming weeks or months, we will have a solution on the market that is the first test in a lot of tests to come, diagnostics test. So yeah, we're also venturing into bacteria, glucose monitoring will also be very interesting. Biomarkers, cancer diagnostic.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but yeah. It's almost 12 o'clock.
That's it.
And I think we like to allow also some questions.
Yeah. Definitely. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. You were already finished.
Yeah.
Okay, really good. Okay, Danny, I look at you.
Yes,
I think the chat is active, eh?
That's indeed the case. And also, you made some people very enthusiastic about your job, Vincent, because we also have somebody who is, well, interested in nanotechnology, and he's from a chemistry background. And what would you recommend as a master study? Would you, because you also did electrical engineering, would that be a good master study to do?
Yeah, that would be an interesting master study to do. I also would like to encourage people to look into machine learning and, for example, catalysis, and surface science, which is also very interesting for, yeah, for analytical purposes. So yeah, for example, that.
Okay. Okay, and the chip that you mentioned, Freek wants to know, is it reusable? Can you clean it? Or how does it work?
At this moment, it's not reusable because the layer is actually it's sort of destructed during the process, during the measurement process. It's something that we will investigate if it's possible to reuse it.
Okay. And do you know which type of biomolecules from the virus contribute most to the SIR spectrum?
There's a lot of biomolecules. So, for example, the RNA lights up quite nicely. We have some proteins, some lipids. Yeah, it's quite diverse. We have about 15 biomolecules that we're looking at.
Okay. Any more time, Ben?
Yeah, for let's say 2 questions or so.
Okay, and what's the biggest difference with the PCR testing compared with your test?
Yeah, so PCR testing is done by reproducing virus particles in cyclone. So cycling up the amount of virus particles and then using a fluorescence-based marker to recognize it. What we do is we directly look into the sample. So PCR takes time because you need to do a lot of cycles. And we look directly into the single sample of the patient. That creates a lot of speed, but it also creates issues with accuracy, obviously, because you don't have that many virus particles you're looking at.
Yeah, and a quick question, the last one then related to that. How is the Raman laser pointed to the right area? Can you miss an important part?
Yeah, so we started off with very large areas and then decreasing the area to allow focusing of the Raman spectrum. But at this moment, we really have a nice custom engineered focusing beam that focuses exactly on the spot that we want it to focus. And we place the sample exactly at that spot. So it's that took us quite a long time. I would say a few weeks to get it really under control. But yeah, looking back at what we did in 6 months, it's it's part of that journey. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. I think for the sake of time, we do have to stop. That's always unfortunate that at the end you have to stop somewhere. Vincent, we'd like to thank you for sharing your data with us and give some perspective on fast testing applications. There will be a little present for you as well. So, okay, that's up to your home.
Yeah.
To thank you. I'd like to thank also the audience, because everybody was really active in the chat and posted a lot of questions and things. And I'd like to thank Danny to summarize this and to pick the most important questions, or the questions that were frequently asked in the chat to the audience. And then to finalize, if you're interested in these type of presentations, or maybe you want to be part of the chemistry community, please go to the website of the Royal Netherlands Chemistry Society, the KNCV. That's the same site where you registered for this event. And then for students, you can be a free member for 1 year, and other people can be a member, of course, but then you have to pay a little bit. And all this information can be found on kncv.nl. Next year, we also like to organize a TAC, the Analytical Challenge for 2021, but we will inform you by emails and so forth, and also on this website from KNCV. Okay, thanks everybody.
Our LinkedIn page.
LinkedIn, Facebook is also active, of course. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you all and goodbye.
Thanks.
Bye.